All right. Welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. This is the myths and mysteries of the 800 meter. So my name is Kyle Smith and I'm the coaching coordinator for Athletics Canada. John LaFranco, he is in the back. He is the Athletics Canada coaching coaching manager. So if you have any specific questions, he's in the background there. So we do have a pretty impressive lineup today. You've probably already read their bios. I'm pretty excited for this. This was kind of my specialty, going through. So, anytime we get to talk about the 800, I'm super excited. So just a couple things before we begin. People, you are all muted. If you have any questions, just put them in the questions box, and we'll get to them at the end. So we'll leave about 15 minutes right at the end there for you. We'll ask questions right from the get-go, and then answer all yours right away at the end. This is being recorded, and we'll post this in the coming days on our AC YouTube channel. I'll also share it with you. So if you've registered for this, I'll send you an email and you'll have that directly to you. And then for those coaches that are in the NCCP, you'll get 1 PD point for this. All right. And also talking about the next lineup, this is a ongoing webinar series. We try to do 4 parts. Let's see if I can stop share and share this really quick. We are going to be hosting one more before we get going here. The pole vault. So this is right here. Sky's the limit. So we'll include Ambrose Couture, Christina Weir, and Olympian Doug Woods. So that will be Thursday, March 23rd, 7 p.m., just like this. So that being said, onto our event tonight. We have an awesome lineup. This is very exciting. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So, how about Anne-Marie, do you want to go first?
I can go first.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. I jump in. So I'm Anne-Marie, and I coach track and field since I'm like 16 years old. I won't say my age now, but so I was an heptathlete. So my relation with the 800 meters wasn't really good. But now that I coach, I really explore all the energetic system and all the methodology about the 800 meters. And for the last 5 years, I've been involved with wheelchair racers. So that's my now my main activities are with wheelchairs racers. So 100 to 800 to whatever events you want in wheelchair. And I still coach every other track and field the events, so high jump, long jump, and name it. So, and I'm also a PhD student right now in exercise physiology. I'm working with people with myotonic dystrophy type 1 and also geriatric people. So I'm a kinesiologist. And so I work with all these people with disabilities, and so that's why I'm into wheelchair racers. And I think that's me.
Well, that's good. I guess that extra background really helps that coach's eye as well, and to really see everything. That's awesome. And I think one of my questions is going to talk about how this range of the 100 that you've talked about to the 800 and above, how this is possible for a single athlete to be, highly competitive. I guess
that's a reality that we have in wheelchair. Yeah.
So we'll talk about that here shortly. Coach Ron, you want to go next?
Sure. So welcome, everyone. My name is Ron Thompson, and I have been coaching for 43 years. I actually started coaching in 1980, officially in Lloydminster. My background, actually, I'm from Jamaica. My background is long jump and triple jump in terms of when I was competing. I competed in the very famous champs in Jamaica. And my only medal was a bronze medal, but I'll take it. Anyway, I came to Canada in 1978, and then I moved to Lloydminster in 1980. I actually started coaching shortly after. How my coaching career started basically was I got a new job in Lloydminster. It was a quality control job in the food industry. So I was a food technologist at the time. And so anyway, I was new to the city. So I was walking around trying to get familiar with the city. I ended up trespassing, if I may put it that way, into the high school. And the principal, Mr. Thiessen at the time, said, may I help you, sir? Because I'd imagine there were probably, I think there were only two Black families at the time in Lloydminster. And, I just introduced myself and said, I'm new to the city. I'm just started working in the city. And so I'm saying I was just looking in the gym. I was looking at the banners, but I only saw one track and field banner. So he said, oh, you coach track and field? And I said, yes, I coached a little bit in Edmonton. And so he said, well, if you're ever interested in coaching or high school kids, then let me know. And I said, well, I'll think about it and let you know. I did not give him a reply for about 5 months because I wanted to make sure that if I was going to pursue it, I was going to do it well. And I didn't want to leave kids stranded in any way. So anyway, my educational background basically is pharmacy, which I practiced in Jamaica, and industrial food chemistry. Anyway, I coached the high school for almost 8 years, 7.5 to be exact. I also formed a track and field club at the time called Lloydminster Olympic Club. And things went well, actually, considering that I was challenged that track and field would not go in the city. And I took that challenge, and we ended up doing quite well. In fact, I think our first year we sent 8 athletes to provincials, and 3 actually won medals. So it was a good start. And so anyway, it gave me the opportunity to move forward and to be a staff coach for Team Alberta and also Team Saskatchewan. And because we're on the border city, so I guess it gave me a little bit more opportunity being in the 2 provinces, or the border city, separating the 2 provinces. So that's my story in a nutshell.
And who are you coaching now, Ron?
What, me?
Who are you coaching right now?
That was the next one. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us who you're coaching now. Yeah.
I am coaching the number 2 world ranked 800-meter runner in the world, Marco Era. And I'm actually coaching with 2 track clubs presently, Edmonton Olympic Club and the Running Room Athletics Club. So
that's awesome on so many levels. That one, I mean, the fact that you just walk into a high school, I love it. That's that's cool. And just be like, that's not impressive. Here's what we're gonna do, and then your first year out, you do it right away. That's fantastic. No, that's good. And then obviously there's your recruiting stream right away, and you're able to build that club and you're building that community. So that's fantastic. Okay, Dr. Gareth, you want to go next? Yeah.
Yeah, so welcome everyone. I'm Gareth. I'm currently the physiology lead for Athletics Canada, based in the West Hub in Victoria. So working with Coach Mark Rowland, Brandon McBride, and the training group here. Prior to that, I was out in New Zealand working for their federation and did a PhD on 800-meter running during that time. And as part of that study, I traveled the world for 6.5 months, visiting different middle distance running groups. So looking forward to our conversation today.
All right. Little modest, but I'll take that right away. Your genius brain will come out here shortly, so this is good. All right, let's get this going then. Okay, so right off the bat, I guess my first question is, what do you use to guide these training plans that you're laying out for your athletes? Kind of, what would you, what do you decide to do and when? Would be my first question for you. Coach Ron, you want to go first?
Sure. I think the first step I would take is, who am I coaching? In other words, the athlete, who is the athlete that I'm coaching in terms of his or her talent, mental toughness, approach, commitment, everything that would entail going forward. So I'd want to know the athlete's strengths and weaknesses, and what makes the athlete tick. So in terms of the preparation, I would go with a strong aerobic base to start with. But having said that, there are so many requirements when it comes to the 800 meter. And in fact, I would say we would go speed and strength and stamina, which 3 S's, which is an endurance. And that you would have power and mobility and technique and the psychology of the event. And I would term the psychology of the event tactical intelligence. So all these qualities are important throughout the season. Speed should be done throughout the season, strength throughout the season, endurance throughout the season. And of course, all these elements have, I'll call them branches. So speed endurance, speed strength, strength endurance, and then you'd have also endurance based on long, steady, slow running, and so on and so on. And then, you'd have power, which is speed strength based on weight training and circuit training, etc. Mobility, which would involve like hurdle mobility and other forms of dynamic movements. And of course, technique would involve how the athlete's foot placement, hip placement, and body posture. The psychology of the event is very critical, because when you go into a race, you have to know what you're doing. You cannot go blindly, because you don't know what is going to behold you. And so you have to, as I say, run intelligently, whether the race is fast, to start with or slow, you have to react according to what's happening in the race. So you have to be vigilant and you have to be focused.
I agree. Yeah. Like there's, so you basically touch a little bit on everything, every kind of every block more or less. And I guess it would just depend on kind of priorities throughout, but really you need to touch a little bit. I mean, speed's a focus for you, strength's a focus for you. You know, the endurance with the running economy, like all this is, they're all focus points, but it's just kind of, I guess, what's kind of adapting throughout the year. And then I guess what you're seeing. So, I mean, if they're picking up speed real quick, obviously, you know where you're at. And okay, so where do we need to develop now? Oh, that's cool. Is I can call on my other two. You can, it's both of you look like you're chomping at the bit. So first person to say something.
What I'm thinking about is at the start of a season, first of all, when you know your athletes, as Ron was saying, I think that the first thing is to test the athletes, find the gap, where we have to go, what is the speed that we want to reach, what's the VO2, what's the threshold that we want to reach, and test the athletes. With that, we can have new objectives. We can put some lines that we want to reach, and test again the athletes. So every once, then we test the athletes, and it's also a way to put the athletes in a good mindset over the testing. Then it's a good way to know where we're at, and do we have is it good, the work that we have done, is it enough, or do we still going on the gap that we want to fill? So for me, testing is a big thing in wheelchair, in racing, all the events. Testing.
And we're going to get to testing, I guess, after, but you've said it a lot. I just want to, I guess I'm curious right now. No, just, you know, is it through time trials that you're testing? Is it through just a specific workout that you're testing?
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Both. Yeah. Because when I built my training plan, for example, at the start of the season, I know where I want to which goals I have with my athletes, and they know too. So they know too. So first of all, if I said, okay, so you have to reach, for example, a threshold of I don't know, 4 minutes per kilometers. So that's the goal. So we will have training plan going with the threshold and cycling more specifically this gap. So at the end, for example, at the end of 6 weeks of training, more specifically on this, I test again. Have we reached the objective or not? So yeah.
Oh, like that. Gareth, do you wanna comment some?
Sure. I think maybe to complement what's been said already, I think Ron really nailed it with listing all the training items, in that really as a coach in these events, you've got to really be looking at speed through endurance the whole time. But what maybe influences decisions in training the most is first understanding which type of 800-meter athlete you have, which the testing Anne-Marie alluded to is a key guide for me. Because if you've got someone like a Nick Simmons, let's say, 800, 1500 type, is going to train and use the information from that testing very, very differently to someone who's coming at it from the speed end versus someone who maybe has a blend of both of those qualities. So if there's like one thing you take away from today, it's really at the front end of everything. Do you have a clear idea of which type of 800-meter runner you're coaching? Because putting an 800, 1500 type athlete through a 400, 800 program is not a match made in heaven. And to really get success over time, as you improve your understanding of that individual, it really starts with aligning those two pieces. All the same measures that Ron talked about are important, but maybe the deployment of those stimulus is different if we're talking about a more speed-based or more endurance-based So a good
The
example.
ingredients, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The ingredients of it, yeah.
So a good example would be like a long run. Like put a Y in the chat if you've ever seen a sprinter do jogging, right? Like they don't enjoy it. They don't have a good time. It's uncomfortable. And so a long run for that type of 800-meter athlete does not mean the same type of stimulus. We still need to get them fit. They still need to develop aerobically, but we're probably more likely to train that through intervals and 400s, where the aim is to build volume and not necessarily continuous long stuff that's going to become too hard very quickly. So when I think about the decisions you coaches make every day, you know, how many of these should we do? Should we do 2 or 5? Off what recovery? You know, what do we have for our second session of the day? When's our next key workout? The answer at every one of those questions is really influenced by which of those types. So that's where I start. Yeah.
It's knowing the athlete. It's just knowing it. This is great. Oh, sorry, Coach Ron.
Garrett, it's a great point, which leads into what I'm going to say. When I started coaching Marco, when I recruited Marco, the first event he did was a 400. And in my mind, for a high school kid who hadn't trained for the 400, he ran a 51 the first time and a 51.4. And I said, that has potential. At 6'4", that has potential. That has legs. No pun intended, right? But his 800 at the time was 204. And so my mind was that I think the training would be in the 400 region based on what I saw. But then again, he ran another 800, and I told him, based on his 400-meter time, I think he had more in him to go a little faster in his first 400. And he somehow had a knack for pacing, naturally, I guess, and at the time. And he actually went 4 seconds faster and ran 2 flat. And I pushed the button some more, and he ran 158. And then he went to provincial championships and ran 155. And then 2 weeks after, he ran 153. So at the time, when he joined the club while in grade 12, I actually started coaching him more as a 400-meter runner. And I thought that even if he would advance to the 800, he needed that speed, because I think he was fast enough at the time. So I trained him as a 400-meter to start with. So if he was more 800, then the training would be, or 1500, then the training would be obviously different. I would still emphasize speed, and because I'm coming from a sprint coach direction, so I would probably be biased to emphasize a bit more speed.
So this falls into my next question a little bit. Let's say we have athletes the same, who do you call it? Coming from the same kind of energy side of things, of where they kind of maximize their trainability through, the 15 side coming down or the 4 side coming up. Is it really all about kind of performance time? Like, would you take a 2-minute runner, I guess regardless of age or gender, but knowing that they're like a 400 person moving up, but they're a 2-minute runner, are they doing, the same things regardless? Like, does gender matter? Does age matter? Or should I train them the same? Or is it different?
Yeah, those are good questions. I think what I would say is, when you're younger, you're naturally going to be under a lower training volume. And that is a time where you haven't grooved too many coordinative patterns or bad habits. And so is honestly, if you can, the best time to be teaching people good movement, good athleticism, learning how to sprint. Because then when you put more and more training volume as people get older, they already have those tools. It doesn't mean you can't improve that later on, but it just gets more difficult. And so I really think age 14 through 18, really developing athletic distance runners is going to be important. If you end up in the 800 or if you end up further on, it does not get any easier as you move up events. If you want to be on an Olympic podium, you know, the 10K guys are closing in 2:25 and running a 52 last lap, you know, so that's not just aerobic, you know, that's obviously a big piece. And so really at both ends of the spectrum, from a young age, you're teaching those skills at the speed end, and then slowly compounding over time the aerobic stuff. Where I would say people don't need to have as much emphasis as often I see a lot of emphasis is in hard 15 to 45 second all-out efforts, like your real hard speed endurance and aerobic stuff. You would be much better spending a lot of time on 3 to 6 second efforts and getting good technique in sprinting, where people need to learn to express force and know what that feels like. And that matters because it improves your ability to tolerate surging in a race. And if we all think about how a race is run, they're not like this. There's a big surge in that first 200, and that becomes really important tactically. So the more efficient you can be faster at a younger age and develop those skills, the easier it's going to be later on when you want to get to those harder 800, 1500 workouts. But it probably doesn't start there and doesn't need to for a long time.
It's really starting at that speed side, always. Like in just the strides, the 30s, the flies, the things.
Well,
like
let's say, well, that might be part of it, but it might be, hey, do you know how to skip? Do you know how to react off the ground, right? Because for some people who've never done it, they need to develop that structural integrity to handle those kind of forces. Yeah.
Gotcha. General athletic ability, coordination side of things.
Exactly.
Like being a good mover.
Exactly. Yeah. And that gives you options. That gives you options tactically later on if it's slow or fast. That's why it matters. Yeah.
You never know how an athlete will evolve with the ages, and mentally the mental skills, and also the physiological systems, how it will evolve during the years. So I think to be very awake, if I can say that, to be awake and to really be to know where's your athletes now, how does the athletes evolve. It's really important to know, what do I have to train now? Is he ready to do like glycolytic system workout? Is he ready to do some 30 seconds full out training? So you have to know where is my athletes in the physiological needs, and also how the athletes evolves during the last years.
Yeah, maybe just to build on that answer, like, you know, a good question, one question that might be asked is, how do I know when my athlete is definitely an 815 or definitely a hybrid or definitely a speed type 800 meter runner? And honestly, unless you put them through probably 18 months to 2 years of consistently training both ends, you're not ready to fully answer that question. And so until that point, you really want to be changing the ways that you're exposing them to speed stuff, and changing the ways and giving them variability in aerobic stuff. And you're going to see where people sort themselves. And then once you get into that sort of 18-month, 2-year period, you're okay, maybe this is the path we're going to go on with you based on how you've expressed yourself in that time. I
guess developmental athlete versus mature athlete too. You're gonna see it. Do they have that foundation side, and have they just never touched on it? Yeah.
I think we also have to consider the background of the athlete in terms of what sports have the athlete been involved in. So you'd have a soccer, an athlete who has played soccer for a few years, or basketball, or a hockey player, or whatever, it's a little easier to determine where this person, or what sort of training you're going to give this person. Not right off the bat, but eventually. The soccer player, I guess the soccer player would cover, like, I don't know, 10 to 15 kilometers over a match. And so you'd look at it and said, well, he should have decent endurance, right? If he has good speed, then that's a bonus too. Whereas a basketball player, like in Marco's case, he would have had some explosiveness through, I would say, automatically jumping, plyometric type of thing. So there would be some speed involved. So you would have to figure how this plays in eventually into the athlete's athlete preparing to run the 800. And this goes, I guess, back to what Gareth was saying. Is the athlete coming from a 1500 or more distant range compared with a speed range, like a 200, 400 type of a athlete?
Yeah, and the thing that's really challenging, I think, for coaches often is we learn training models from maybe who we learn coaching from, or the education that we had. And the challenge in the 800 is you get so much variability in the types of athletes that come to you that could be successful. And so unless you start with this approach of, okay, which type of person do I have, and then steer into that, you end up in a scenario where you're putting people with different profiles through the same program and expecting them all to get good outcomes. And that doesn't stack the deck in the probability of having a good outcome. And, I'd say, a lot of the conversations I have with Ron or with Mark here, with Brandon, it's all about understanding that athlete as the individual, maximizing the things that make them good to give them their best race. And you can do that too, starting from, or which type of person are we talking about?
So, okay, so this falls into my next, I guess, specific to you, because this is major part of your research has been through this concept of anaerobic speed reserve. Gareth, can you talk to us like what is the anaerobic speed reserve? Like what?
Yeah.
This concept, yeah.
Yeah. So it's two things. It's your sprinting speed and your 2K pace. Okay, and the reason those are important is if we think about the athletes in our squad, those two markers give us an indication of the speed and endurance balance of an athlete. So someone with a very large speed reserve might be a more speed-based type 800-meter runner, and someone with a smaller speed reserve but greater aerobic side, greater 2K time, might be more 800, 1500 base. Now that's a starting point, right? But say if you coach in college, for example, or high school, and you have a bunch of new athletes come in a new class each year, from day one, you can do those two things with a stopwatch and a cone, and you can go, okay, here's the spread of what I have in my squad. Now, instead of writing 50 different programs, you might be able to write 3 and go, hey, the speed group can maybe do this. The endurance group can maybe do this. And maybe the people who are showing a bit of both, they can do an in-between of the two. And so you write 3 programs for 50 athletes. And then on a day where you're going to make adjustments for a given session anyway, you can still do that thing. But what it does immediately is it goes, hey, we're not going to get the speed people doing the same thing as the endurance people when we're training aerobically all the time. Now, there might be times where you want that to build team cohesion and all those things. Mm-hmm. But if the emphasis is physiological development we can meet people where they are from those two very simple things that give us that idea of spread.
I agree. I remember doing fartleks and things, and I would just blow up. And
Right.
days later, the fatigue stayed with me. And, you know, you do a similar thing for, maybe it was mental side too. You do it on the track, you know, a bunch of 200s, and, you know, I could control my pacing better, and, you know, different system, you know, similar workouts to an extent, similar system, but, you know, what we're trying to accomplish here, but not to the level. And I was able to.
So where would you put yourself, Kyle, on that continuum?
Oh, I don't know. You know what? I guess I'd love to see you test me, you know, and to see why, you know, I felt like I needed a bit, you know, I guess more true base, because I didn't have enough pop, you know, to really get after it. And I definitely didn't have enough strength to handle with the 15 3K guys. So, I mean, I definitely would get blasted out of the hole, you know, with my training group, on both, you know, on those two ends. So yeah, I guess I kind of fit more in the middle, and kind of maybe.
So what sessions? So given that, what sessions really worked for you?
Yeah, I guess I liked, you know, I think maybe the repeat 3s and 4s and 6, you know, those twos, like a lot of those, I hated doing repeat 800s, but you give me a bunch of 6s or a bunch of 4s and 2s, and I was okay. And I could come back the next day, and I would, you know, or even that day, and still be able to do more. But you do the long 30 minutes, you know, continuous running where you're changing pace, and I was just done.
Yeah. So another piece I hope people are picking up who are listening or watching later on, and noticing that, you know, the testing piece we talked about is the starting point, but you can also ask your athletes, hey, which sessions do you feel you get the most from? And which do you find the toughest? As well as watching that and getting that feedback every day, you're building that picture really quick.
And they know, you're right. And so when you say your speed test, is that like a 30, a 50?
Yeah, I use the standing 50.
Okay. The
reason for that is that anything shorter than that really relies on quality of acceleration mechanics.
And you're talking distance people, or like middle distance, who aren't getting up, you know, that's probably when they're max up to speed around what, 35?
Yeah, 35 to 50 would be about right.
Yeah. I guess anything less, they might not be there.
Yeah. So if you wanted the speeds, you can take the last 10 of that or the last 5 of that and do a speed as distance over time and get your speed from there. And then the average of a 2K time trial.
Like 6 minutes, like kind of idea.
Exactly. Yeah. And those 2 landmarks will get you there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I agree. I do some 30 meters flies to measure the maximum
30 meter. Yeah.
But flies. So
okay. They're already at speed, because I guess that's the big change is that's it. They need time.
Yeah. And also just for them on the aerobic side, you can estimate that kind of your second threshold for tempos would be somewhere around 80% of that 2K pace.
Okay.
Yeah. And then so right there, you know, you've got 3 of the key training landmarks that you want to be looking at. And then really the only other one that I'm thinking about all the time, because easy stuff should just be easy. You know, I'm not going to overstress about that with an 800 person. Is you want to really know where 800 pace is, because often in the teaching of the 800, a lot of the prescription is energy system based, which you don't need to do 800 meter energy system based training a lot of the year. But what you do probably need to be in touch with is the rhythm and the feeling of 800 pace. So that might be 100 efforts, 200 efforts of open rest, where the aim is about feeling that technique, feeling that pace. I know Wilson Kipketer used to do a lot of just running 200s on the bend, you know, trying it from different lanes, because there is an art when you come to executing the race of being able to cut in off the bend, manage the pack and get in a good position. So if we're only in lane 1 all the time, we get drawn in the outside, how are we gonna manage those things? So I think there's the skill component too, because you do get some 800 runners who maybe their sprinting speed isn't outstanding and their aerobic isn't outstanding, but at the specific 800 rhythm pace, and coaches, I'm interested what you think about this, you find some people are just very, very efficient in that rhythm. They're not necessarily great when they go to the 4, and they're not necessarily great when they go slower than 800 pace, but they have very particular strengths in that biomechanical pattern. So those are the 4 items I look at. So again, sprinting speed, your pace, VO2, which from your 2K time trial, and your threshold, which can be around 80% of your VO2. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the good thing with training the speed is that the moment where you are the most efficient can be can make the threshold a little bit higher. So you're more efficient at a higher speed, but you're still under the threshold with speed training. So
Kyle,
Yeah.
you mentioned that you had problems, or you didn't like
You're making me
Run-
live my old memories now. I love it.
running the 600s,
Yep.
right? Now, did you do the split 600s?
Like a 200, like a 600, 200 kind of repeat.
Like a 3 short cover 3.
We did 3 threes, things like that. We would never, yeah, it wasn't, we do like a 4-2-2, like breakdowns like that. I don't think I ever did repeat 3s with short recovery. It was more like your typical, you know, a 2-4-2, 4-2-2 breakdown, something like that. A 6-2 or a 5-3 or 3-5, and then varies of like 2-6 to see if you can how you talked, find that rhythm and then work with it, like that idea. But that, yeah, we didn't do kind of 2 threes.
Yeah, I
That'd
guess
be interesting to know that
4-2
idea.
a 4-2 would also be pretty good too.
Yeah. And I guess that's it. You kind of choose those ones for the time of year, because, you know, it's
Exactly.
mentally, it was a lot easier for me to do, obviously, for a 4-2-2 or a 2, you know, you can break that down in your head and work through it. You know, I think, you know, you choose those ones as a coach at the right time of year, because, you know, the athletes, at least me, was a little soft earlier on. And, you know, as racing and as more, you know, my confidence grew, and my, you know, my ability to to process everything grew. Yeah, those workouts would change. Yeah.
What I found was that when I was coaching Tyler with 400, I would say mentally, giving him like a 500 or a 450 was more overwhelming than, you know, giving him like 250s.
Huh.
Because you broke it up, but mentally it did not look, or it did not feel as overwhelming, or, you know, very, very daunting, right? So I had to do that. So the athlete would agree to do 1 500 or 1 450, then would break up the 2 450 or the 500, so that you'll get similar results. So it's aerobic, anaerobic threshold type of thing.
I guess this is where you're talking to the athlete, and they know, and I guess it would change because you have younger athletes who they also don't know as much, or, you know, they can still talk, but like that idea where, you know, the older athletes do have that awareness piece. Now, granted, they, again, still might be soft, and like I think of me, just that mental side of like, no, I need to get kicked and let's go. Like I gotta be able to do this. And so I guess, so when we're thinking, you know, what really considerations do need to be taken into account if someone is more aerobically strong versus someone moving up? Like, you know, let's think of a race execution. Is that different? We've talked a little bit that training is going to change, and how you've kind of laid out these multiple programs, groups of people that, separate for certain workouts, come together for, your key workouts, because obviously they still all need to run an 8. So you still need to have the feeling of this, in these race sims and, an actual race. So, what really, I guess, what do we need to think about? Coach Anne, do you want to go first, Anne-Marie?
Yeah, I can go. It's always hard because I think that with different background, we have to deal with different strategies, right? And the problem is that 800 meters is a packed race. So as a point, you have to be with the pack if you want to have a good race. And so I think that that's the limit where you can work with the athletes and say, okay, first 400 meters, do it that way, the last 400, the last 200 meters. So there's always, I think that we don't control in the 800 when we're in competition in training. So I think that's a big limit, but still, when you're able to work with different athletes and different background, different strength with the anaerobic or aerobic system, so you can work with the tactics behind the race. Yeah.
You're right, because you're far enough away from it, from the pace, you're done. Doesn't matter. We're all going through at that same pace, trying to hit this split within a range. And if you have to run in lane 3, 4 to be in that pace, you've run extra meters. Like, that's it. You're out. You're done.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Swinging wide and just the mental side of things of just being, I'm in dead last.
So on some races, it can be like your races, your pace and everything is good for you, but in other meets, it's not good for you. The pace, the pack is not your speed. So that's
I guess
I
can think of a race, the 1,000 meter in Monaco, and we had Jake Whiteman and Marco, and Jake was the 1,500 meter world champion, and of course he would have a bit more aerobic capacity. Hence, the execution of the race for him was quite good, or quite intelligent, where he stayed back a bit, and while the faster runner would took it out. Now he was able to close stronger because of his stronger aerobic capacity. So I would say the 1,500 meter would be able to sit back in a more comfortable position and then make a dash for it in the last 100 meter or 50 meter or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, Ron. I think there's a few things I'd say to coaches. Number one is, I think you want to get to a place of understanding your athlete's tipping points for certain sections. So what are we comfortable at going through in 200 that means we don't totally fall apart in the second half of the race? And having a very clear idea of where you are. And I say that because one of the biggest mistakes I see often is people trying to race strategies that they are not in shape to execute. And you could be coming into a championship with a chance of still having a good outcome. You're just not maybe at world record pace at the moment, And so one of the big things every time coming into a championship is, well, what shape are we ready to execute? I'm ready to execute over 3 rounds. And what's our wiggle room on that? We know, to Ron's point, if we're someone who's maybe a bit more like a Jake Whiteman, then maybe we're going to have a bit more of an even strategy with a smaller differential between the first and second lap, a bit like Nick Symmonds in the 2012 Olympic final, where he ran 50 and 52 to run 142. If you're more speed-based, that differential might be bigger, maybe a 3-4 second if you're a Donovan Brazier type individual. But that's something everyone can control, because if you don't have that awareness yourself of where you currently are, you run the risk of getting drawn into what other people are doing. And that doesn't mean in the moment, if you feel good and you feel like you can go with that, that you shouldn't go with that. But I think you want to have those things in place, because it minimizes your variability of bad performances, right? And maximizes the chance of you executing to the shape that you're actually in. And to me, that's one of the big training gaps I see in the 800 meters, is tactics gets talked about for the first time in the season when people have just gone out the first round because they got in a bad position. So that's something that doing mechanics of 800 pace year round gives you a really good dial of where are we and what can we execute. And then when you get to that time of season, maybe 3-4 weeks out, and you're doing those key 800 meter workouts, you can go, okay, this is the shape we think we're in, plus or minus. And this is something, Ron, that you were very clear on going into Eugene this summer, right? We knew what kind of shape Marco was in. And that meant in the championships, in the conversations we could have between rounds, we knew where we were at, and we knew what other people might try and do, but that wasn't what we were going to try and do, because that wasn't where we were.
Right.
You need to know. And I think, like you said, you practice, like I've worked out a few times with the Dalhousie crew. So like Coach Rich Lehman, he simulates different things. And so he has, light bumping at time, just within reason, obviously, but like ways to kind of just anticipate, someone coming up on a sprint and you don't, like a surge, and you don't know when. And it's just those little things that you are not shocked when it happens in the prelims of your major competition, that you're prepared. So that's good that we do that. I wanted to add, sorry, go for it.
Just quickly. And so Gareth alluded to the speed aspect of training for the 800, where you can make the surge at a certain time during the race and be cognizant of what's going on around you. Because somebody at, say, the 220 or 250 mark will just suddenly surge, and you have to prepare to react to that surge. And you also have to be in a good position to react.
Yeah. And so maybe a good take home for coaches on the call and people listening is, given the type of individual I am on that continuum, the type of workouts I've done and what kind of shape I'm in, how might I deploy those skills, whether the race is slow or a moderate pace or fast? Because I think if you can do that, and do that far away from racing, and meaning racing outdoors, like you go into those things going, oh yeah, I've seen this one before, I know what to do here, and I think that really empowers people to get in the middle and know what they're going to do. And we're not talking about over clouding the mind, but having 1 or 2 cues or items or ways that they're going to feel in control of racing their outcome.
It's nice to know. It's just to that you've planned ahead more or less by putting these little bits. That's good. Okay, so I had a specific question I wanted to ask. Coach Anne-Marie, I wanted to ask you. So again, you talked about at the beginning that you coach 100 to the 8 and more. Like this is this major range. So I guess my question is, how do you really, with the focus of the 8, your athlete is focused, the 8. How do you prepare an athlete to do all these events, but be like, no, you got to go for this one though?
Oh yeah, that's a pretty hard question, because in wheelchair racing, you have categories where athletes only have two events. For example, in the T34, which is cerebral palsy, for example, the athletes can only do the 100 and the 800 meters. So we have to train these athletes for the 100 and the 800, because at a point that you want to have more opportunities, some meets there's only the 100 for these categories or the 800. So my way of thinking about that is we need some max speed. Anyway, for the 800 meters, we need to have an athlete that can have a good max speed. So during the years, I do some blocks of speed training. I do some blocks of like glycolysis training. And the thing is, I don't focus on the 100, but still I work on the starts. I work on the acceleration phase. I work on the max speed, and I work on the glycolysis system. I also work through the year, more specifically, where we are going into some major meets, more specifically with the 800. And that's my way of working it. And I work with athletes, and this is my way of doing things is the athletes is involved in the process. So as an example, Lee Leclerc, who is a T34, the problem the last couple of years was that at the start, the pack is already away. So the acceleration phase and the max speed wasn't there. So last year we worked on that, and I really think that it's a major breakout, because you will be able to be with the pack, and it's important for the 800 meters. So I don't forget the 100 meters, but I work with the abilities that we have to work on to incorporate with the 800 meters workout. It's just that I work differently during the years with all the different energetic systems to be more specific at the end where I want to be.
Cool. Because I mean, the times are quite similar to what we see with kind of international level able body as well. So like it makes sense. This progression is quite similar.
Yeah.
The big just how you're setting things up. Yeah.
Sorry. The big difference is that because you only use the upper body, sometimes the different energetic systems, it's a different time lapse. So you have to know your athletes. You have to know your athletes.
It just comes back to knowing it. It depends. And you know your athletes. But you need to have that conversation. And I think that's what people want. It's this athlete set, you're talking to them. You're in constant communication. You're not just an athlete in a group. You're this athlete, this specific athlete, and this is geared towards you because you're important and here are your goals. So that makes sense. Okay, so we had an audience question that I wanted to get to. So there's times, there's these mythical times that these people focus on that you have to break, right? These barriers that get focused on that, like, I need to break this. So, I look at the women's 800, the 2 minute. Why is the 2 minute the benchmark, and why is it, so difficult to really break 2 minutes? Like what's changing this? What needs to change, or what why is it this very difficult thing to kind of surpass?
Yeah. I think that Gareth told a bit about that. Later he said that the biomechanics efficiency is very important, and at some point, at some speed, people have different speed efficiency. I think with the women, the speed efficiency is a little bit less than the men's, and that may be a limit to reach the 2 minute. Oh, Gareth, I see a smile.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the game in the women's 8 is at 1:55. So let's make no mistake, like they're not hanging around. Like 27.5 is the first 200. So being comfortable at that is requiring, probably a sprinting speed of around like 8.8 meters a second plus. Yeah, not to you continue, but the men's and women's 8 are different, but the speed requirements I don't think change in that sense. The surging is still as aggressive.
It's still that similar side of things where major surge, maybe slight less decline.
The main difference I would maybe state is between speed type females and speed type men, in the sense that typically women's physiology has a larger type 1 muscle fiber, slow twitch muscle fiber percentage, meaning that generally speaking, you can have women that can develop the aerobic side as well as the speed, whereas sometimes on the men's side, they're so fast twitch that they can't develop the aerobic in that same way. So I think that's an important take home, because sometimes speed-based athletes can be excused for not being aerobically fit, but actually they can all get there. It's just the nuance of the deployment of that. That's
how you get there, and the kind of
And so your point about the 2-minute conversion piece, to me, is we have to get individual with people. Like when I first got involved with Canadian track and field, when I came to visit in 2017, there were at the time 15 800-meter women who'd run 2:03 or faster. But at the time, only Melissa who'd gone sub 2. Mm-hmm. And so I think the question is, when we get people in that frame, how do we go more into the individuals that they are and really explore that and move away from the model-based training? That would be a comment. And interested in people's thoughts on that. Yeah.
Did she just make it? She just showed it's like this is very doable.
Yeah, but there's more that can, lots more.
Oh, I agree. And and they have.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been this, this trend of the time. The time is just, the women's 8 is just stacked right now. I mean, it's incredible what it was, what it is. It's, and just the amount of what it takes to make a finals in a Canadian championship is incredible. I'm sure not all of them are feeling that way because they know how fast it takes, but it's, from watching it and, seeing it, like, this is great for track and field in Canada.
Ron, what's your take?
I have a similar take what you said. I think of the 2 leading 800-meter athletes right now, Atting Mew and Hodgson from the US, from England. Yeah. They're different, actually. I think she has run 49. I don't think Hodgson run that fast. But the fact is that they're very closely competitive. And so Hodgson would be a little bit more aerobic based, whereas I think is more speed based. And so, but at the same time, their 200s would be very similar on the first 200 would be very similar, and then it regulates itself as the distance goes, where the strength of a thing takes over a little bit in the last 50 meters or so. If I may use that comparison. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And lucky to know Keely's coach, and for sure they train speed from a young age. The same coach as Jenny Meadows had, former 157 UK athlete. Yeah.
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 So,
This is good. So we've reached our time. I want to be mindful of your time. I want to be mindful of our audience time. I love this discussion. I think this shows, we got through minimal amount of questions that I had, and audience, people
Should we do a couple more questions, Kyle? There's quite a few in the chat.
There is. I'm game. I am game to keep talking.
Yeah, let's do a couple more of the questions. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
If everyone else is all right.
Yeah.
No,
I'm good.
no, is everybody okay with that? I mean, again, I don't want to take your time, but this is perfect. Okay, perfect. And this is being recorded. So if people have to leave, it's recorded. You can come back after and you can watch the remaining of this. So this is good. Okay, so I guess I'm going to continue on. Let's go to overtime. Let's do this. So I guess feeding on like the, from that side of things, do you have recommendations then from a master side of things? From masters athletes would be my, one of the questions that have come in. And any recommendations dealing on that side. With speed, with the aerobic side, because too much speed, is it different training plans? Do you just got to extend a program to maybe more of like a 14-15 day cycle, so there's more time for that? Does speed take much longer to develop? I'm not sure if people feel comfortable speaking.
Yeah, I think one of the things I would say is we know over time, just with aging, unfortunately, that our VO2 max declines.
Yeah.
Right. So if we're in the masters category, it's really about, can we continue a training volume, right, and do something sustainably? So that would be part one. I think if we are a masters athlete and we've not really touched on speed before, then we want to be particularly careful about doing that. I think we also know with aging that you do get some muscle atrophy. So the weight room probably holds an important place, both from a muscle conditioning standpoint, but also testosterone point of view, and also for just being able to handle the training volumes perhaps that you did when you were younger. So I'd say those are probably some of the key areas to think about, and just being able to do that consistently and stay in one piece.
Yeah, and with aging, sorry, Ron. Go ahead.
I would also, in addition, I would employ a bit of circuit training appropriately. That would also include a bit of endurance and also a bit of strength. So, if you had, let's say 8 exercises in the circuit, then you could add a bit of running in between or after the circuit. In between would be better, depending on the level of the athlete.
Yeah, another piece might be as well related to Ron's circuit idea is actually offloading some of the running where you can to other modalities, so that not every day is huge ground impact. I think that would really help with the sustainability piece of being able to keep training consistent over time. So you might use an elliptical or those kind of items in conjunction.
Right.
Yeah, and with aging, the fiber type also changed from type 2 to type 1 progressively. So a good way of thinking about it is, do I need more speed training to maintain the type 2 fiber? So the gym can be a good thing to like work in power training but to minimize the chance of injuries.
It almost feeds from that developing younger at, like when you're talking about coordination side, because then now you're going back in the weight room and using that. This is that Physical literacy all throughout, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so I guess feeding into a little bit, what are you looking for when the signs of an athlete pushing too hard, this idea of burnout? Like what do you use? What is your coach's eye seeing for burnout, and how are you adjusting based on that? I guess that's a loaded question because it could happen at any point throughout the year, and obviously fall if you're seeing more strength side to overloading with competitions. But I guess, what do you look for? Like, is it this constant conversation you're having with athletes that you can hear it in their voice, or are you seeing it? Does it matter if you see it in one workout?
I think an important starting point is like, what have we got going on in the training? Because to arrive at burnout, we've done certain things for quite a while to get to this point of burnout. So I often think a lot of the solutions to these kind of things can be front-ended by good conversations about, are we doing appropriate training loads given all of the things we've got going on? Is our squad on a good diet? Do they know the basics of what nutrition they should be eating and refueling? Are we getting regular health checks with the doctor? Do we have physio? Those kind of things. And I think if we front end the planning of things with athletes with that, then we actually end up catching these things a long time before they happen. So in a training sense, where does that start? It starts with meeting people with where they are. It doesn't mean everyone has to have X amount of mileage a week. It means, what do you do now? And let's build from there. And that could be the same across speed or endurance. So there's a few questions in the chat about, what speed session we should be doing. It's like, well, what have you done in the last 6 weeks? If the answer is nothing, then the answer is not go and do some all-out sprints tomorrow. It's maybe start with, can we get a physio screening to see if we have any sort of mechanical or structural red flags that mean that we might be at high risk of running too fast, right? Because if we do, then maybe we need a period of time where we're in the weight room or we're doing these things before we go into sprinting. And if you've never done it, you might be on a 6 to 18 month road to get to the point where your body's ready to handle that. So I think really getting the support around you as a coach and trying to front end those things.
I like that. And I guess kind of on what you're talking about seeing the workouts, do you have any specific workouts that you would use, not dealing with burnout, but dealing with I guess your sprint workouts? Like, what are your go-to workouts when you're talking sprints and when you're talking endurance?
Go ahead, coaches.
Coach Ron, what are Coach Anne-Marie, go for it. Yeah.
I don't have specific workout. Like I can choose like 2 workout that's my favorite, because I think depends on the athletes. Some athletes like you like to do some 200 splits, and some others like to do 600. So I think that when we're more in a specific workout just before the main event, the thing is to have the same intensity as what we will have in the race, but to have lower volume. And that's probably my favorite kind of workout just before the race. But during the year, I don't have to, because I adapt to what the athletes need to have. So hard to say. I have my favorite one as an athlete, but
so your max, your favorite speed workout.
Yeah, I think it's regressive in volume. Like, for example, 100 with 10-15 minutes recovery, then 80 meters, maybe 50 meters. That's it before a meet, like 2 weeks before. But during the years, 10 times starts, 10-15 meters if you want to work starts. And if you are going with 800, some splits at good intensity, a little bit faster, less recovery time. So I really like this kind of workouts where it's more specific.
I've used an alactic anaerobic endurance workout where basically you're running, say, four times 60 meter with 1 minute recovery or 45 to 60-second recovery in between repetition,
So just go like that.
followed by 7 minutes per set or between sets.
Okay.
I've used it for 400 runners, and I've also used it for 8s. So you do anywhere from 3 to 4 sets, mostly 3 because it can get quite fatiguing.
Do you do as flies or as standing start?
Flies.
Just curious.
Flies.
Yeah. About 45 or 60. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what, Kyle? I think that the main important thing when we're programming a workout is to have a good recovery time. Because if you don't, you won't be able to work the good energetic system that you wanna train.
Yeah. Do you want it sloppy, right? You don't want it
Yeah.
sloppy. You're there for a reason. So it needs to be that fine line, obviously not too much.
Yeah.
You don't,
That's a main error that I see with coaches. Oh, let's go. You
It's
can do it.
too little? Too little or too
little.
much?
Yeah.
Too little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I did mention before, it's a alactic speed endurance workout. Now the speed, actual pure speed workout would be different, where the recovery would be much longer. Right? So we have done like 30 meter, 40 meter hill sprints. And the recovery is much longer.
Yeah.
So it's different from speed compared to short speed endurance. Alactic. Yeah.
And hills in flats are a safe place to start.
Yeah.
Speed rather than on spikes. Oh, sorry, in spikes on the track.
Yeah.
At any age too, I find. Yeah.
Yeah. So should we take one more?
Sure. I guess I was kind of curious. Just one more. I was just curious. What are your go-to then 800 specific workout? What's your workout for Lee? What's go-to 800 that either you want to see or he likes? One of the two.
One of the things that it's not that much different, but in wheelchair racing, when you have to pass an athlete, when you have to go for an acceleration, it's a big process because you have to go out of the box, you have to accelerate, you have to go back in, and sometimes you need like 150 meters, 200 meters just to pass. So it's a big move to do. So the start as a 800 meter wheelchair racer is very important. I think it's the start and the acceleration phase is very important because if you're in the first place during the race, the other athletes in the back will have to do a major effort to go in front of you.
So it's a big tactics side. It kind of reminds me of the 600 indoors. Like that's what I think of. This tactics side of get to the turn first, and you can you hold them off. You can. It's easy to.
So with Lee, he needs to have a good acceleration because if he needs to pass, if he needs to accelerate to do a move during the race, he needs to have power. Anytime during the race, he needs to be able to do a move. So some workout with the 800, what I love to do is like 100 meters at a specific tempo of a 800, and then you have to go a little bit of a kick and go back to your intensity 800 meter speed.
So you're changing pace within it.
Yeah, you have to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And interesting.
One of the tougher
What's
workouts
Marco?
that,
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Let's hear Marco's. Yeah.
so early in the season, so part of the prep season, I'd say, okay, we'll do 10 to 12 times 200 at 30 seconds or 30 to 31 seconds with 30 seconds rest. Then as the season moves on, say the specific preparation period, I'd go, say, we're going to do 8 at 27 to 28 seconds. And then we'll go down to 6. So we'll do 6 at 25 to 26 seconds with the same recovery.
Okay.
So
And-
that's one of my favorite workouts.
Yeah. Does Marco like it?
At the beginning, he doesn't complain, but I
Yeah.
know.
30s you don't complain on. 26 is on 30 seconds rest. You're depending on the time of year, you might be keeled over at the end.
Yes, exactly.
Let note your lunch. Yeah.
What do you think about
Uh,
that, Gareth?
Yeah, I think the answer to that question for me would be there is no one magic workout, and what works for Marco is not going to work for the next person. So I think these are all good ideas and examples, but it's really where are you at and what question are you trying to answer as a coach, and is it giving you that? If it's a training response, or if it's let's say a pacing question you're trying to answer, where's my tipping point? I think being clear on those things helps you design the workout in that way.
Yeah.
like
I've
that.
used the 200 workouts. You probably know that at the championships, but we'll only do a limited number, right? Maybe 3 at 25 seconds, right? But with a minute or so recovery instead, or 2 minutes.
Find that rhythm. Yeah.
The rhythm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
just
that
locking it in.
purpose
Okay.
is
This is
the
my
rhythm.
pace. This is what I need. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna ask one final one because we touched on the top end of master. So I want to make sure I touch one more and then we're gonna call it. Is that okay? We just
Yes.
So thinking of kind of that youth range, that U16 range, we've talked about testing with the 2K and the 50. You've talked about your different tests that you use, training. What would you recommend for youth athletes? Like, is the 2K the same for a U16 athlete? Or should it be a 15? What do you do with training and what do you do with testing? I guess ideally they're multi-sport transitioning in, but to full-time or ish kind of athlete, right? They're either single sport or double sport at this point.
Yeah, I think for me on the question of the 2K specifically, like generally speaking, you're wanting a representation of what people can do aerobically. So the 2K is something we can use as someone's got more years of training under their belt, but we don't necessarily need to deploy straight away. There are training sessions you're seeing every day where, hey, Carl's struggling on this fartlek, this maybe isn't his thing, right? You're seeing that's information. So I think the test is one piece of an overarching thing of what is the speed and endurance propensity of this athlete, right? If you're training from them for the 400, let's say, as Ron did with Marco, and you expose them to some more aerobic type stuff, maybe intervals of short recovery, where you're building volume, you see they respond well, that's information. If we then extend that, can they keep going with that? Well, maybe this is someone who maybe isn't a 400 person, maybe they are an 8. So I think you start where you are and you experiment.
And I guess they're hopefully doing a variety of events too, right? That idea that
exactly
doing multi events through. Yeah. Multiple events. Yeah. Cool. Does anyone want to add any more, or does that sound? I like that. All right. So,
I
yeah.
agree totally with Garrett. I do agree. Yeah.
Well, this is exciting. You saw that there's a lot of more chat. I think this is showing that yes, people want this. Yes, this is more discussion that needs to happen. Maybe we got to break this up into like 6 45-minute slots next time. But I really appreciate you being here. I love that you used me as the test on me on some of these things. That was great. Relived my glory days or painful days. No, but thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your insights and your experiences. And this is awesome. Yeah, we really appreciate it. So, audience, thank you for being here. Panelists, thank you again. Yeah.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks
This
so
is
much.
fantastic.
Our
Yeah,
pleasure.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you again. All right, everyone, have a great night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.